Hey everyone, welcome back to Someone's PC, bringing you some good One Piece content. And here's the deck list we have for today, and let's go ahead and get into this Red Limited Battles deck. For the next series and the rest of the weekend, I'm going to run pretty much like a day after day of the limited deck battles list that I currently have. These are kind of ever changing. I'll probably swap like 2 to 3 cards out, depending how I'm feeling about it that day. But for this one, we're going to go over Luffy and, yeah, just the red life. So if you're thinking, like, I don't know what to play for limited battles, and I wonder, like, what the best color is going to be, Luffy's really popular. I'll keep it a buck. This deck's the worst of the 4. Like, I thought it was going to be so much better than it is. I thought that Red getting the promo Luffy and then having, like, two copies of the deck and then getting 4 copies of the 5-drop Luffy are going to make it really good. This deck is just not it. You can high roll this deck, still lose to your opponent if they draw, like, decent to strong. You could beat every deck if they, like, low roll and you hit your perfect curve, like, Nami into, like, Zoro or Sanji into Luffy into another Luffy, and then, like, follow up Jet Pistol when they play down a blocker. I don't know. You got a chance, but if I wouldn't play this in a limited deck, in the limited battles tournament coming up, and yeah, I would just play with the deck just to practice for win set 1 drops, and you'll be playing red anyway. So if you're red till dead and no matter what you want to play red, yeah, this is the list for you. Man, all right, let's just get into it. So we have the Luffy leader. This card's pretty cracked. It got second at a like the largest Japan qualifier event, championship qualifier, something like that. Activate main. Give your leader of one of your characters a Rested Dawn card, pretty much in combination with this and the 1-drop Nami that we have here. You can give Rested Dawn that you paid for to play as your characters onto your leader and just supply a lot of aggression, like normal red stuff. So we're going to go ahead and play 4 counts of Nami, 4 counts of your 1k1 blocker, which is Chopper. Card's adorable as well as really strong. A change from most other lists that I'm seeing is that I am running the 2 Karoo. Some people are playing 3 or 4. If you see it early and like when you end up getting evens, and you're able to play like a turn 1 Karoo plus Nami, Karoo can kind of like take over the game. It's good to have against green, especially if they open like the Jewelry Bonnie. And if someone else is playing like 1-drops in their own list, you kind of want your own like respective 1-drop to respond back to when they swing at you. That comes up a lot during the limited battles, and you'll see in the next couple of videos I have of the other colors that it comes up more often than not. So just only 2 counts of those. It's a 1k counter. It's not that bad. Following up into the 2-drops, we have the Rush Sanji. Pay 2 or 2 when it has 2 Dawn, give it Rush. You pretty much like just drop this in to play for 2. Take 1 Dawn off your Nami, take 1 Dawn off your Luffy, and put onto Sanji. Now he has Rush for the turn. I would say more often than not, you kind of want to sit on one of your Sanji plus a Luffy for late game to kind of overpressure a turn. So you have like a 5-drop Luffy plus a Sanji out, and then you can give your 2 Dawn from your Nami and your Luffy to this Luffy to give it unblockable, and then you can pay 2 to play this Sanji, and then take 2 of your open Dawn and then put it here, and then you have 1 open to spread however you want. That just allows you to like play against multiple blockers, if not multiple counters in hand, just apply a lot of pressure. So every list should be running 4 of these no matter what. It's just a really good card. Next up is 4 of the VV. It's your standard 2k vanilla, 2 cost vanilla for 4k, has a counter. Doesn't do much, just comes out and then turns into a 5k the following turn after you play like another one of your characters. You take the Rested Dawn to pay the character and put it onto Vivi, and that's pretty much how you play every game. For Brook, sometimes you can utilize its first ability, its on-play ability of giving 2 Rested Dawn. Most of the time I like to keep it in my hand, just a 2k counter. You only have 4 of these, every deck only has 4 of these, so you really have to like utilize them well. Then we have 4 Nico Robin. I see people dropping this to playing like 2 or 3. I don't understand why. You're kind of playing a rush deck, and it has a 1k counter in it. I see people playing the Jinbei or 4 copies of the Zoro, but I found that in limited battles, there's a lot of times when I'll be playing against blue, and they'll pop back my 3 costs back to my hand, and when that happens, and I just don't want my Jinbei or my Zoro to get stuck on the board against them, so I'd rather have a 1k counter being bounced back to my hand to be super huge. However, Zoro's not horrendous, so I do play 2 copies of it. It's Dawn times 1, this character gets 1k power, so during your turns it's 7k, during your opponent's turns it's 6k as it has the Dawn underneath it. Don't forget that it has cross turn power up, And yeah, for the most part, this card's it's not that good. It's decent, but like it's not crazy, and it'll get swung at a lot by your opponent, and it doesn't stick on the board in this meta. Like it'll get popped by Green's Killer, bounced by Blue with Teach, or popped by Who's Who, and they'll just repeat the process. And instead of investing like 3+1 underneath it to go into like a cross turn, I'd rather just kind of just always know that I'm not going to hit this out of security and lose because I'm missing on a 1K. I'd rather just hit another Nico Robin out of security so I can get the 1K counter. You might lose games because you don't have the 1K counter coming at you. Yeah, 6K, 4 cost, 1 counter. Good card. I usually don't play to the board too often, but it's just when you have nothing else, when you're grinded out of resources, which is pretty normal in red, it's nice to have on the board. Then here's like the king of the deck. 5K Luffy, Rush, 2 Dawn, becomes unblockable for the rest of this battle, or for the rest of this turn. So basically, how do I say this? This is a card that I love dropping on turn 5, swinging with it, and if I ever see another one, I hold it for my lethal turn, when I'm expecting them to have 1 or 0 life left, and then put out 1 or 2 blockers, and I just want to bait them into using their blockers so I can swing for game, or if they choose not to, surprise rush them with this Luffy out of nowhere, and then give it, 2 Dons so that they can't block it at all. So, very good card, especially in this deck. Every red deck will be running 4 of these in the future. If you pick them up, if you picked up the red deck, then you're definitely going to get value out of this card. The last one is 4 of the promo Luffy. Dawn times 2, this character gains Rush. There's a couple times that I've played it on 6. I didn't have Nami plus leader, or I didn't have Nami out, but I did have leader Luffy. And I just kind of put it out there just to, have a 6-7 body on the board. I didn't want to give it Rush, but I needed something to kind of give a good presence. And you shouldn't be too scared to make such a play, even though it feels underwhelming, except against maybe Purple, because Purple's going to pop it with Kaido into their following turn, and Blue can use Dofi and pop it back to your hand, but it'll have Rush anyway, so if they want to spend the Sables or the Dofi to add it back to your hand, you're super down for that. And yeah, this is a really good card to give you 4 of. As you can tell, this doesn't have, Zoro doesn't give any counters, Sanji doesn't give any counters, Luffy doesn't give any counters, and this Luffy doesn't have any counter. So you're quite vulnerable on the defensive end of playing this deck, including only having Chopper there too. So high heavy count of no defense, meaning we're gonna play 4 guard point. So this is a very exclusive one cost event, which gives your character or your leader 3k power for this attack. I love having it to kind of feint and bait the fact that when I have 1 Dawn open, I might be able to go to like 3k higher than what I'm currently at. Also, I want to protect my attackers that I already have on board. This deck really triumphs and has those high roll games I talked about in the beginning if you're able to keep the characters that you invested onto board on the board and in play, and just playing guard point really helps you get there. So I'm definitely cracking out 4 of those. Next up is Diablo Jambe. People running 4 of these, and I can see that happening in set 1 when there's a lot of blockers and a lot of 2k counters. For now, you just need 2 of this. You don't want to draw multiple copies in a single game. Kind of want to hold it for your final turn to trump card them. And alongside having like this Luffy that says it can't be blocked, you really have all you need with 2 as well as the 4 Luffys. And yeah, just overall around solid card. Really like it. Last would be the Jet Pistol. Just pops a 6k or less. Yeah, I mean, you can activate out of your security or health in this case, and you can trigger pop cards on the board. This usually just kills Basil Hawkins, Queen, any blocker your opponent might have on the board, or like any 5-drop against blue. You can pop Crocodile, and it's all around a very strong card to have in the deck. It's a phenomenal way to keep your hand somewhat healthy, because you can pay 4 for Jet Pistol, pop one of the characters on board, take the 4 Dawn that you spent on the Jet Pistol, and distribute it accordingly to apply pressure to your opponent. And maybe you're sitting on like 2 cards, and those 2 cards are the Sanji and the Luffy that we talked about earlier to try and go in for lethal. So very standard. Not much too different. I see a lot of people running the Zoros. Not sure how I feel about that. And or are heavy counts of the Zoros. And overall, when you're playing this list, you're just kind of go aggro, beat face, high roll. If you're losing a lot of games because you feel like your cards don't do enough or your top end isn't as strong as other people's top ends, that's just the nature of red in limited battles. I wouldn't get too upset about it. And that's just kind of how these games roll in a little bit of battle format. Yeah, there's a risk reward factor there. I don't think there's much else to go over. Red kind of plays aggro and just, like I said, attach Dawn with Jav open or tapped onto your board and keep your board safe. And against purple, I would say my advice is always play out your character before attaching your Dawn onto a Luffy. So if you're on odds and you're on 3, you can play your 2 or 3 cost and take the rested Dawn and put onto Luffy to kind of guarantee you're swinging in for 6k or 7k at your opponent. And I tend to always play the character no matter what. I don't care if you hit a who's who against me. I'm just going to accept it that you did hit the who's who, and then you can go to 3 next turn, drop your Onigashima. But what I don't want is for my opponent to be able to defend it just because I'm swinging in for 5, and then I lose any hope of clearing out the game early when they drop an Onigashima the following turn. So if you don't want to play extremely reckless and extremely careless like I'm playing, you can always just hold back your Dawn, swing with your leader always first, and then play down your character. You shouldn't feel like you need to use the rested Dawn to put your character in danger that early, but there's a lot of cases of you just have the luxury of doing it, and you'll find turns where you're top deck a Nami and you already have one on board, and you're like, oh, I should really play the second one so I can get value out of it. When there are some turns when keeping Nami in the hand would be better off overall for you just to play your solid 5 drop when you're at 5, or your 4 drop when you're at 4. It's Frankie might have a better presence here if I don't have a 3 drop Zoro or Nico Robin to follow up behind this Nami I'm gonna play. So enjoy yourselves. It's Red Till Dead. It's just super aggressive deck. Not much else to it. Good luck in your limited battles, and hopefully you high roll and get there.